explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody watching out there to this week's episode of Breaking History. Gordon, how are you doing, my man?
I'm great, Matt. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm in transit right now, which is why I've got a lower than usual quality video feed and audio feed. And for those out there who demand excellence, I do apologize that I cannot meet that demand today. But that's the way it is. We're in Mexico right now at a hotel room. So it's been fun. We're going to be back in Montreal in the icy, snowy, frigid winter in a couple of days. So can't say I'm looking forward to that. But we got a lot to go through. I know we were chatting a little bit about some of the hot topics on our minds right now. Iran's going to be something we're going to jump right into, and then I'm going to get your thoughts on that. We'll zoom out. But I figured maybe before we do anything, a word from a sponsor or two is probably a good idea, right?
Yeah. I will say that your audio is great, so I think that's
that's
the most important part is your audio sounds good. So,
good. All right, that's a surprise. All right, well let me pull up today's first sponsor, which is the Van Man. Although I didn't work. Oh, there it is. I got it. Okay, here's Van Man. All right, you know about Van Man taking down big toothpaste with the all natural oral care, right? Van Man's tooth powder is loaded with minerals like eggshells and bone, and combined with pulling oils and peppermint aloe mouth rinse, it's truly the ultimate fluoride-free dental hygiene bundle that saves you 25% off of individual prices, and the van never stops here. Introducing Van Man's new Pearl Eye Cream and Sweet Onion Shampoo. Sweet Onion Shampoo, really? Head over to badlandsmedia.tv/VanMan to see what's new. That's badlandsmedia.tv/VanMan. I read that too fast. It's right there. badlandsmedia.tv/VanMan. That's it. All right. And then we'll do one more, which is going to be Tamarack. The Tamarack Garden people have co-sponsored today's show too. So it was a pleasure to promote their work, which I can't find. I'm so disorganized with these ads.
Here, let me see.
I got it. Here it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll do it live.
All right. Are you? Oh, what?
No, nothing. Sorry. Continue.
Okay. Here, I'm going to go really fast now. Are you looking for a better alternative to the over-the-counter drugstore medications? Tamarack Garden began from a parent's desperate need for safe and effective options for their kids, tired of toxic chemicals. Taking matters into their own hands, they began crafting medicine from weeds, wildflowers, and herbs. The original time-tested healers that modern medicine cannot match. Packed with antiviral herbs to boost immunity and fight illness, Tamarack Garden has for a limited time their elderberry and rosehip syrup kits available. Not only is it delicious, no more battles with kids, and easy to make, it will keep you and your family healthy all fall and winter. Introducing Tamarack Garden's new baby line, clean, non-toxic, and gentle for newborns and moms, relieving cradle cap, diaper rash, stretch marks, and postpartum pain. Visit TamarackGarden.com today and use promo code Badlands for $10 off orders of $50 or more. Remember to eat your weeds. That's Tamarack Garden's promo code Badlands. Not bad, eh?
Yeah, not bad at all. I was just making a joke of what's his name? The guy from Fox News, the blowhard, whatever his name is. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I cut myself to Fox News so long ago.
You and I both. But anyway, I would say shout out to Tamarack Gardens and Van Man. They're both great companies, great products. Had the pleasure of meeting them at GART. Mm-hmm. I'd encourage you to reach out to the companies and ask questions because they're knowledgeable. So
absolutely. Yeah. My wife uses the Tamarack Gardens products too. And they gave us some free samples that are fantastic. Aloe and everything. It was great. So we were talking about how frustrated both of us are with some of the thinking in Washington and elsewhere in the think tank world, as well as in the general population that seems to buy into some of this stuff. That Iran seems to still have crosshairs on her over the entire nation. There's a carrier strike group. I think it's the Gerald Ford carrier strike group has just entered into waters off the coast of the Middle East that have joined with the SS Lincoln. Propaganda wheels are moving. Now we know that we've seen similar things that looked like they were going to blow up, and cooler heads prevailed behind the scenes with a little bit of a surprise. We've been, we've been talking, planning behind the scenes, and so we're not actually going to do the thing you thought we were going to do, that we were announcing we were going to do for months and months before the moment strikes and it falls flat on its face in a positive way. This time, we're not really seeing as much of the cooler head side of things. So what do you think, Ben? Where are we at?
Well, I think the cooler head signal is there. It's just not being as pronounced right now. There's a pattern that I've noticed that across the entire, and I've been talking about this with other hosts from Badlands. It's not just Iran; it's everywhere. These weird. Hegelian dialectic is the dialectic is really the way to look at it, is where you have the two opposing sides that are in conflict right now. I mean, whether you're talking about right now, the General Flynn and Steve Bannon are like General Flynn and the people around him, Roger Stone, others that he interacts with online, are all going hard against Steve Bannon right now, right? And calling him, basically affiliating him with Epstein and saying that he's whatever, a wolf in sheep's clothing, all that kind of stuff. I don't think I've seen Bannon respond to that. Maybe he has, but regardless, those dialectics are everywhere. Another example would be the UAE and Saudi Arabia. Right now, there is a narrative that the UAE and Saudi Arabia are in conflict, and they're splitting right now. And Lindsey Graham will tell you that Saudi Arabia is choosing the path of the jihadists. He's joining with Turkey. MBS is joining with Turkey and Pakistan, while the UAE is going with India and Israel. The pattern that I'm noticing is that this is all like the fissures all trace back to the same place, and that's Israel. Of course, it's a place that I obviously have fixated on over the past few years, and for good reason, because I personally believe that Israel controls most apparatus in our government, specifically the GOP. I think they also control the Democrat Party to some extent, but it's all a uniparty, of course. But I think you're really seeing that just come to the surface right now in ways that are very in your face. I mean, there's no way to ignore it, right? I mean, we can sit here and say America first, America first, America first, but every time you want to have a conversation about America first, you seem to just get dragged back into like the kicking and screaming into the what about Israel? What about Israel? What about Israel? Right? Whether you're talking about geopolitics, the Middle East, whether you're talking about even like the Venezuela, Colombia stuff. The people at the forefront of that are all Zionists, right?
Yes.
Maduro and Petro, in my opinion, are the most vocal anti-Israel world leaders out there, like even more so than the Muslims. Hugo Chavez, of course, has a Palestinian flag flying over his sarcophagus, at the state memorial for him. So it's and then they had the anti-Semitism, or not, it wasn't anti-Semitism, it was the Religious Liberties Committee last week, where what's her name? Parjeen, I forget her name. I didn't even know who she was before that those clips went viral, but it's like she's
the younger girl calling out the Zionist representative, right? Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is the head of that, and he's kicked her off the committee now because she basically was just like, why do we have to worship a foreign government? And they're like, wow, that is really anti-Semitic. You're gone. And she's like, all right, well, I'm not leaving until President Trump tells me I'm fired, because he's the one who appointed me. And that hasn't happened. President Trump hasn't come out and said she's fired. Only Dan Patrick has. So it's interesting. Like, these fissures are everywhere. But if you look at the characters that are involved in every single story, whether it's the Venezuela Colombia thing, or it's Saudi UAE, Lindsey Graham, or it's Iran, Mark Levin, or it's like free speech, Dan Patrick. It's like all of them are raging, frothing at the mouth Zionists. Well, yeah, and the two selected puppet candidates to be installed as puppets, whether in Iran or in Venezuela, are themselves have declared open fidelity to the Zionist cause. Whether it's the Shah, who's done his little weeping wall thing in homage of Israel, who Lindsey Graham just came out with a big flag at the Munich security conference speech that he gave, and Lindsey Graham came out with the old 1960s, 70s Iran flag with the I think it's the golden eagle on it, you know, celebrating the Shah's inevitable restoration of power, or whether it's Maria Machado, who's said, you know, it's only a matter of time. It's just my time isn't here yet, but it's only a matter of time. You just wait. We're letting the thing play out. She also declared fealty to Israel as well, clearly. So I see what you're saying. Yeah, there definitely does seem to be factions, fissures around this principle in all places. But now with the Iran cause, who right now is where are you seeing signal or signs of the non-World War III dynamic presenting itself in that zone? Because I'm a little bit worried. I don't know about you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's certainly worrisome. Like, let's pull up the Axios article, because it is worrisome. Like, I don't want to. I'm not trying. Yeah. Like, I'm not here to put lipstick on a pig. Like, if I see something that looks like dog shit, I'm gonna call it out and say this thing looks like dog shit. So, like, this article would be an article that I would point to, and I'd say, well, this is this is not that the article is nonsense, because I don't think the article is nonsense. Just that the idea behind it, right? And this would be from Barak Ravid, who I have said many times, I think Barak Ravid is a honest journalist in that he is told something and then he reports what he's told, right? Now, whether he's being told is the truth or accurate, that's a separate question. But I don't think, as far as I can tell from the patterns that I have recognized with him, he says something. He's like, here's what I'm being told by the White House. And then, you know, and that contradicts what the official narrative is, right? And then inevitably, his source ends up being right. Like the thing plays out the way that his source has told him it plays out. And then when President Trump does interviews with Israeli media, he's the guy he does the interview with. He just did a phone interview with him last week. So this is the guy that Trump goes to get narratives in Israeli media. And he seems to have a firm source within the White House that is feeding him information. I don't think the information they give this guy is always the truth. I think they use him, though, as a narrative megaphone. To disseminate narratives. So that could be what's happening here. However, I also recognize that President Trump, going back the past 10 years, is surrounded by enemies. And I think that he has let those enemies come into his camp. He's opened up the war tent, let them in, given them a seat at the table. And that, frankly, is like a Sun Tzu art of war tactic. As long as you have firm control over the situation and you know who those people are and you know what their motives are and you know how they're going to act, you can keep the upper hand. Now, what this article says is it says Trump moves closer to a major war with Iran. Damn it, it's archived. 1 second. I have it right here. The Trump administration is closer to a major war in the Middle East than most Americans realize. It could begin very soon. A U.S. military operation in Iran would likely be a massive weeks-long campaign that would look more like a full-fledged war than last month's pinpoint operation in Venezuela, sources say. The sources noted that it would likely be a joint U.S.-Israeli campaign that's much broader in scope and more existential for the regime than the Israeli-led 12-day war last June, which the U.S. eventually joined to take out Iran's underground nuclear facilities. Such a war would have a dramatic influence on the entire region and major implications for the remaining 3 years of the Trump presidency. With the attention of Congress and the public otherwise occupied, there is little public debate about what could be the most consequential U.S. military intervention in the Middle East in at least a decade. Trump came close to striking Iran in early January over the killing of thousands of protesters by the regime. But when the window of opportunity passed, the administration shifted to a two-track approach: nuclear talks paired with a massive military buildup. By delaying and bringing so much force to bear, Trump has raised expectations for what an operation will look like if a deal can't be reached. And right now, a deal does not look likely. Trump's advisors, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, met with Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi for 3 hours in Geneva on Tuesday. While both sides said the talks made progress, the gaps are wide and U.S. officials aren't optimistic about closing them. Vice President Vance told Fox News the talks went well in some ways, but in other ways it was very clear that the president has some red lines that the Iranians are not yet willing to actually acknowledge and work through. Vance made it clear that while Trump wants a deal, he could determine that diplomacy has reached its natural end. Trump's armada has grown to include 2 aircraft carriers, a dozen warships, hundreds of fighter jets, and multiple air defense systems. Some of that firepower is still on its way. More than 150 U.S. military cargo flights have moved weapon systems and ammunition to the Middle East. And just in the past 24 hours, another 50 fighter jets, F-35s, F-22s, and F-16s have headed to the region. The standoff with Iran has gone on so long that many Americans are likely numb to it. War could come sooner and much bigger than most realize, sources say. Trump's military and rhetorical buildups make it hard for him to back down without major concessions from Iran and its nuclear program. It's not in Trump's nature, and his advisors don't view the deployment of all that hardware as a bluff. With Trump, anything can happen, but all signs point to him pulling the trigger if talks fail. And then it goes into the timeline. It says the Israeli government, which is pushing for a maximalist scenario targeting regime change, as well as Iran's nuclear missile programs, is preparing for a scenario of war within days, according to 2 Israeli officials. Some U.S. sources tell Axios that the U.S. might need more time. Senator Lindsey Graham said strikes could still be weeks away, but others say the timeline could be shorter. Quote, the boss is getting fed up. Some people around him warn him against going to war with Iran, but I think there is 90% chance we see kinetic action in the next few weeks. One Trump advisor said, U.S. officials said after Tuesday's talks that Iran needs to come back with a detailed proposal in 2 weeks. Last June 19th, the White House set a 2-week window for Trump to decide between future talks or strikes. 3 days later, he launched Operation Midnight Hammer. There's no evidence a diplomatic breakthrough with Iran is on the horizon, but there's more and more evidence that war is imminent.
And how are the talks doing? Did they completely break down in Geneva, or is there still a chance of those things hanging on?
No, and the funny part is that, like, while the rhetoric that seems to be disseminating to Barack Ravid is that, like, these talks have kind of been a failure, the Iranian side is actually saying that they're very encouraged by the talks. We have video from Abbas, I think it's Abbas Araghchi. Let me pull this up, of him meeting with a journalist yesterday and saying that after the talks, and saying that that for the first time they actually have principles in place that they can work from. And that he's actually encouraged and thinks that there's a lot of work to do, but that they actually can move forward with a dialogue and there's an understanding at least.
Well, I think it's relevant that you also have the U.S. meeting with the Russians in Geneva as well, purportedly specifically on the Ukraine dossier, but undoubtedly the fact that it's the same location where the Iran-U.S. talks are also happening undoubtedly means there's some spillover, and we know that the Russians have provided some wild cards in this whole mix too by providing an open offer, which I think has been accepted at least in principle by the Iranian side, to process a lot of the spent fuel, the enriched fuel that they said they can send back to Iran, fully usable for the civilian sector. And also, there was an offer that I don't know to what degree the legal documents were signed for Russia, Rosatom, to help construct something like 8 Iranian nuclear facilities. This is already way back, right before the 12-day war with Israel back in, I think it was, May of last year. But those offers have not left the table. So to what degree that's also coming into play is very interesting. What do you got there? Is an RT article, Russia, China, and Iran hold joint naval drills, right? Yeah,
so they're about to hold, not just Russia, but China as well is about to hold joint naval drills with Iran in the Persian Gulf. And this is just this is a flex, I think, from Putin and Xi, just being like, yeah, this is, you're not just going to war with Iran, you're going to war with Asia if you do this. And the global South, frankly, because I think the whole global South will get behind Iran, including the Arabs. I think the Arabs are very much of the mindset that enough is enough. Everybody understands that this is all being driven by a Zionist agenda and has nothing to do with like nuclear weapons or world peace or any of that nonsense. This is all about a war that Bibi Netanyahu has demanded for the past 40 years. And it couldn't be more obvious. This video is I'm sorry.
Yeah, just to add to that point too. This is from the Middle East Monitor from January 29th, just as a reminder that Iran, China, and Russia have signed a trilateral strategic pact that does involve, and I don't quite get the degree of obligation yet, but there is a mutual defense aspect to it. Probably not as obligatory as binding as NATO's Article 5, which itself also has a lot of loopholes. But this is something which is very recent as well that added to the already existent 25-year and 20-year strategic pacts that had already been signed and passed into law between Iran and Russia and Iran and China, two separate things that have been more integrated as one single unit. So that's also, I think, a very relevant point to keep in mind, that any fight with Iran is likely going to have a greater chance of dragging in Russia and China at this point because of this. So that's a factor that people should hold in mind. But you were going to show a video?
Yes, I'm going to show a video. But before I do, it's important to point out that, Netanyahu and the Zionists aren't stupid. Like, they know that the war with Iran will bring Russia and China into the mix. And I think it's important to continue to highlight the relationship between Ukraine and Israel. And that I think that the proxy war against Russia certainly has a lot of Zionist fingerprints all over it. And this seems to be the animus against Russia, which is historic, by the way, from Israel. I think very much is about getting a hot war between the U.S. and Russia as much as it is getting a hot war between the U.S. and Iran, which is certainly an agenda item that precedes the relationship between Iran and Russia that's evolved more recently. But I don't think they're stupid. It's not like they're like, oh, well, we're only going to go to war with Iran. We're not going to go to war with Russia or China. They know what they're doing. They know that this is going to lead. But look at what's happening with Ukraine, right? Everybody is fed up with the Ukraine-Russia war. That thing has definitely reached its dead end a long time ago from a narrative standpoint. Everyone's just it's like a dead cat bounce now. Everyone's like, why the hell is this still happening? So I think they're trying to transfer that momentum from Ukraine to Iran and to keep the conflict between Russia and the West going. So let's play this video. This is right after the meeting. This is actually Pezeshkian, not Arakchi. But let's hear what he says. And actually, this is in Farsi, so I'm gonna have to read it. But he says, I think there's actually an
English dubbing.
Well, there's an English dubbing, but there's an English subtitles, but there's actually I think this is a longer version of it. Let me play this one. As we have stated many times, my statement is not important. The policy and fatwa of the supreme leader are significant from a religious perspective. And side note, he's referring to the fatwa from 2003, where the Ayatollah said that it would be against the doctrine of Islam to pursue a nuclear weapon. Yeah. We are in no way pursuing nuclear weapons. However they want to conduct verification, we are ready for this verification to take place. But the idea that we cannot use science and knowledge to save our patients, our industry, and our agriculture is something that we do not accept. We hope the world understands this, that America understands this, and that they do not accept the rumors and propaganda claiming we are pursuing a nuclear bomb. They should not accept it, of course. They want to instill this idea, but instilling such notions does not align with our beliefs. And then I'll just go back and play the other video because I don't know if it was contained within. But he says, how many times do we have to say that we are not pursuing nuclear weapons and never will? Let them verify whatever they want. If they truly want Iran not to have nuclear weapons, we are ready to cooperate on any kind of verification. So this is interesting. And, people who have a bias against Iran because they've consumed Fox News slop their whole life, because those people are in my live chats all the time where they say, well, frankly, Iran is just too evil to be allowed to exist. Of course we have to kill them all. Which is just
very, very, very Christian of these Fox News watchers.
Yes, exactly. Tulsi Gabbard came out last year in March of 2025, 2 months after Trump became president, and said Iran is not pursuing a nuclear weapon. That is what our intelligence suggests. And then Trump's intelligence community did their own assessment, and they released it, I think it was in October, and they said the same thing. They said, yeah, based on everything we've looked into, they are not pursuing a nuclear weapon. That is not happening. So that kind of begs the question, well, then what exactly was Operation Midnight Hammer? Because we're told that Operation Midnight Hammer was B-2 bombers flew over Iran, dropped bombs, just like I mean, literally what they said to us, what General Kane said and Pete Hegseth is they associated it with the movie Top Gun. They were like, what happened in Top Gun Maverick is basically exactly what happened in Midnight Hammer. They fired the little bomb into the little hole and blew up the big bad nuclear facility.
Okay.
But even if you accept that that's what happened, like let's just accept that's what happened. The extended narrative from that is that there were no scientists in there. The place had been abandoned for months. This is like Israel saying this. And then they say, oh, well, the nuclear material had been removed months before and transferred. So now we need to go hunt down the nuclear material. And it's like, well, wait a minute. So you're saying that there was nobody working in this facility. There was no nuclear material. So we just blew up a bunch of concrete. Is that what happened? Like, yeah. I wonder whether did B-2s even fly over Iran? Like, I'm wondering, because what was happening at the time was that, and we know this now because I'm going to pull up an article that shows this, is that infiltrators inside of Iran from Mossad took down their air defenses and allowed the Israeli planes to fly deep into Iran and bomb all over the place. China is the one who's saying that that's what happened. And China's very concerned about this. So it looked like this thing was escalating very, very quickly last June. And this was after Trump said, don't do it. Don't do it, Netanyahu. Don't do it. Don't start a war with Iran. We don't need a war with Iran. He did it anyway. So then Trump steps in and says, you know what? Operation Midnight Hammer happened. It's called the 12-day war. It's been 12 days. The war is over. We're done. And then Netanyahu sent more planes. And then Trump was told about this as he's walking out to a helicopter. And he says, you know what? Netanyahu doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. That's what he said. Exact quote.
I do remember listening to that. Yeah.
He doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. That's what Trump said. The president said that. Yeah. And he called up Netanyahu and said, you better turn those damn planes around right now. Netanyahu, I don't think, bought the narrative of Operation Midnight Hammer, but who is he to stand up and say that publicly, that the president's lying to the world, that nothing actually happened, nothing was blown up. Now, again, if you want to accept that B-2s flew over Iran and blew up these facilities because it helps you sleep at night, fine. I need to see more evidence of that before I'm actually willing to believe that that's what happened. Because within weeks of that storyline being deployed, both Rubio and Wickoff were talking about investing money from the American side into building new nuclear facilities like reactors in Iran for like an energy program. So why would we blow up a nuclear facility only to turn around and invest billions or millions or billions of dollars into building a new nuclear facility like in Iran? Doesn't make any sense. Like the logic doesn't line up. Yeah. So if we go to this article now, this is from The Cradle, who I know you are familiar with The Cradle.
Sure.
Beijing moves to contain Mossad's expanding reach in Iran. It says Israeli intelligence operations inside Iran have alarmed Beijing, which saw them as a new model of intelligence warfare, prompting deeper technological security and strategic cooperation with Tehran. Now, the article goes on to explain that not necessarily to talk about the protests from last month, which I think most people have come to understand that was a Mossad-backed operation, but actually going back to June and talking about the infiltration that happened there and how Mossad had put all these people in place that deactivated air defense systems and basically like open the gates, so to speak. They opened the gates to allow the enemy army to come in. And China is now extremely worried about that. They're worried about Mossad having done that in Beijing. They're worried about the infiltration in the Chinese government, and they're calling it a new style of warfare that's not just hybrid war, which is like economic, kinetic, cyber information, but also like fifth column infiltration where you actually have kinetic operatives on the ground in your military, like deactivating systems and doing sabotage. And this is a new chapter in the history of war.
I missed this a little bit regarding how did these operatives infiltrate? You're saying they also infiltrated Beijing?
Well, no. China's just saying they're worried that this style, that Israel has basically applied this to other countries.
Oh, I see. Right.
And that's the point that I'm getting to. If they've done this in Iran, where you gotta think that like somebody walking around with like a big Israeli flag on their forehead probably isn't getting through many doors in Iran, right? However, go to Washington, D.C., and they proudly walk around with Israeli flags on their forehead. Imagine how deep the infiltration is in our government if they were able to penetrate this deeply into Iran.
Yeah.
And then apply that to Beijing, apply that to Moscow, apply that to London, to Paris, to every capital in the world, it's not, I think, beyond the realm of possibilities that you're looking at an octopus network of infiltrators that are there like as sleeper cells that can be activated at any time, or maybe are just operating around the clock to subvert and frustrate efforts that are contrary to Israel's agenda and Israel's priorities.
Right. And in that sense, there was a smoking out process, because a lot of those who were activated to throw out or put out the this regime change operation at the beginning of January were exposed before they could do the damage that they were supposed. There was a lot of damage. There were thousands of deaths, and I think even now there's been the discovery in forensics of Israeli military grade bullets in the bodies of children in Iran that were shot, sniped, or whatever by forces that you've just described, and who were thus exposed as they were trying to pull off their big regime change operation, which we know is it's the preferred style. There's a variety of ways of overthrowing a government you don't like. The preferred one is the democracy movement pioneered by the National Endowment for Democracy and George Soros types over many years, because that at least gives the moral illusion that it was the people who did it to themselves. Now, of course, that sort of thing typically requires provocateurs, very well-paid provocateurs with Molotov cocktails, parties brought in as mercenaries to sit on buildings, shooting both the police and the protesters to just stimulate and increase the tension, accelerate the tension. That sort of thing is part of the formula. But that didn't work. That, when we saw a variety of ways that both the Russians provided technology for the Iranians to get around some of the technology that was used against them, as well as it seems the possibly Elon Musk's Starlink might have played a role as well in providing the usernames and the IP addresses of people who were coordinating to carry out that coup or that regime change. So they lost most of that card. So now it requires a more deeply embedded set of infiltrators that haven't been identified yet, who are probably more embedded in the Iranian civil service within the military complex that they're possibly relying on right now to play a role in a new phase 2 assault. But as you pointed out, that this is very ubiquitous. It's very, very, it's widespread.
Yeah, and so your question earlier was, where is the signal that this isn't going to happen, that we're not going to get to a war? The signal's coming from Trump. I mean, Trump has been asked about this multiple times in the past week, and and consistently he said they don't want a war. Like, they want to make a deal. They want to make a deal. Let's just pump the brakes for a minute, guys. They want to make a deal. They want to make a deal. They want to make a deal. We're talking. So Trump is actually the one putting out, not fanning the flames. I mean, typically in a lot of times, Trump is the one fanning the flames. He's the one leaning into it. He's the one saying, we're going to get Maduro. We're going to get Venezuela. He better watch himself. In this particular situation, he's not doing that. He's actually pulling the reins back and saying, everyone just slow down, just take a breath, stop hyperventilating. Like, we're talking to them right now. We would prefer to have a deal done. At the same time, there's a lot of physical evidence to suggest that there's a big military buildup. We just went through that, which, as all of these analysts are pointing out, indicates that you can't do this buildup and then not pull the trigger. Like, it's Chekhov's gun. Like, you got the gun out there, you better pull the trigger. You and I both know that would be an utter disaster. That would really complicate things in the Middle East. It would complicate things with Russia. It would complicate things with China. It would send global markets into a tailspin. Energy markets, all those sort of things would be highly disrupted. And whatever catharsis the Zionist segment of our population might feel from watching people die on camera in Iran, that's not going to counterbalance, I think, the logic and strategic thinking of long-term of is this actually a good idea? Should we actually do this? This doesn't really seem very smart. Starting another forever war with a legitimate military and a legitimate civilization far surpassing that of Iraq from 25 years ago. So I think, do I think this is actually going to happen? It shouldn't. If it does, and we do find ourselves deeply entrenched in a really serious war with Iran, I'm really going to question a lot of the things that I thought about this Trump administration and the people who run it.
To add a little bit of substance to your positive hypothesis, I have been struck by some of the ironies over the past week or so. I know last show we did 2 weeks ago, you were bringing up Petro, and Petros' meeting with Gustave Petro being the Colombian president, his meeting with Trump, which was quite a surprise. Trump had earlier called for Petro's overthrow, a little bit after, I think, the kidnapping of Maduro. And Petro, turns out, had a very pleasant conversation with Trump, despite his anti-Zionist proclivities and everything else. And then he came out more recently, I think this was just a couple of days ago, delivering the following remarks. I'll just play a little 30-second clip it from one of his talks describing efforts to, well, he brings out two scenarios. This is, the first scenario is not in this clip, but he brings up how he had to, I think, land his plane in an unspecified, uncontrolled, or unscheduled landing because of plans to kill him. The other one was plans to drug him by the head of the chief of the Colombian police, and this is what he says here.
Hay un general que ordené retirar de la policía.
I just realized this is in Spanish. 1 second.
Hay un general que ordené retirar de la policía. Tiene una misión extraña, alguien le dio la orden, no, obviamente no nosotros, para ponerme sustancias psicoactivas en el carro. Ese tiene que ver con usted. Y allá no su casa, era para eso. Y tenían como misión destruir la reunión con Trump, de alguna manera u otra. Ya se destituyeron varios. Pero eso me coloca en una situación de alarma y con esto peor.
Of course. So that's actually a second thing, right? Because he had first made a reference, I think, in a previous speech to efforts to actually destroy his plane. This one was specifically in regards to an effort by the chief of police, who was a general, who he had to dismiss because there were plans that had circulated that there were efforts to put psychoactive substances. And this reflects a little bit, it reminds me a bit of the plans that were put forth by Sidney Gottlieb back in the late 50s, early 60s, to overthrow Castro, Fidel Castro, and his Sidney Gottlieb's proposition. This is the guy who ran MK Ultra for the CIA under Allen Dulles, was to put psychoactive substances, LSD-25, something else, on Fidel Castro's cigars. And we know that Castro loved giving these 6-7 hour speeches. And in Sidney Gottlieb's mind, that plan would have been very, very useful if the whole population were to see, Castro all of a sudden like rolling around like a dog on and barking or something on stage, which could then be used to encourage a regime change, of which there were something like 30. Like Fidel Castro, love him or hate him, a lot of people hate him, but the fact is this guy was a splinter in the side of the CIA. And he did survive like 30 assassination attempts. Several were just this very scenario here, variations on Sidney Gottlieb's theme. And what did he do? This is a guy who was kicking out the Meir Lansky organized crime syndicate that was behind the creation of the entire state of Israel. He kicked out United Fruit, that had been sort of the mercenary, strong arm paramilitary unit masquerading behind capitalism, Chiquita Banana and all of that was overseeing the colonization, the economic colonization of the Americas under the CIA, under the special forces, under the Wall Street banks over the course of the entire Cold War and pre-Cold War period. So he kicked out a lot of these major powerful, super powerful entities. But the fact that you have Petro all of a sudden saying that these types of plans never went away, but they were attempted to be done in order to prevent him from having that type of discussion with Trump. And then you had, as well, speaking of Castro, what did you have? On the one hand, you had Trump saying this just a couple of weeks ago.
Cuba?
I don't know. The word choke off is awfully tough. Cuba is a failing nation, and you have to feel badly for Cuba. They've treated people very badly. We have a lot of Cuban Americans who really were treated very badly, and they'd probably like to go back. And no, I'm not trying to, but it looks like it's something that's just not going to be able to survive. I think Cuba will not be able to survive.
What's your opinion about the UK getting involved?
Thank you for your note very much.
Thank you.
All right, so he's basically saying Cuba's going to fall. It's not going to survive. There's been a lot of pressure, some dirty pressure, painful pressure that has resulted in people's lives being really, really hurt as far as oil embargoes that have been, the effect of pressures put forth by the United States onto Mexico, onto many countries to prevent them from sending oil, natural gas, and other things to Cuba. So it did seem like there was pressure to do an intervention into Cuba. However, then I saw just this morning you shared a certain article, there it is right there, indicating that in fact something else is going on and that discussions with Raul Castro have been underway now for some time, possibly indicating that maybe a happier ending to that story might be in place. So what is this article that you just found?
Well, so what you just said was with Petro, I think it was actually his helicopter, and I think it was there was a team waiting to kill him and his daughters when they landed after taking a helicopter. It was a helicopter flight to survey the Monterio region that had been flooded out while he was in the U.S. The billionaires opened up the floodgates of a major dam, hydroelectric dam, flooded this river valley basin. And so he was taking a helicopter flight when he came back to survey it. And they were going to land at the landing pad. And according to Petro, there was a team there waiting to kill him. And so they went somewhere else. But there could be, if there was a plane situation, that might've been a different story, but that's the one that I'm familiar with. Castro, this is a fascinating article because what Trump was just doing right there is leaning into we're going to do Cuba next. And you've heard a lot of these Republican senators who are all ardent, loyal supporters of Israel. They're Rick Scott, Lindsey Graham, Tom Cotton, even Marco Rubio, saying that Cuba's got to be next. We got to do Cuba next. So here is Mark Caputo. Mark Caputo is interesting to me because I keep names in a Rolodex in my head of all right, these are names that pop up that when they're saying something or they're reporting on something, my ears perk up. Barack Ravid is one of them. Mark Caputo is another writer for Axios who actually co-authors a lot of articles with Barack Ravid. He's also the White House correspondent for Steve Bannon, War Room. And I know that there's trepidation when it comes to Bannon, but it's worth pointing out that there's this weird Hegelian dialectic happening right now between Bannon and Flynn that we got to wait and see how that plays out. But the Epstein stuff, I'm not really convinced that the Epstein narrative around him is what is presented. So, but that's a discussion for another time. Point is that Mark Caputo is like one of the guys who writes for Axios who does seem to accurately convey what he's being told by the Trump administration. Whether or not the information he's being told is accurate is a separate question. But it says Rubio has been holding secret talks with Raul Castro, who is the grandson and caretaker of Cuba's aging de facto dictator, Raul Castro, as the U.S. puts unprecedented pressure on Havana's regime, insiders tell Axios. The talks between Rubio and Castro, known as El Cangrejo, the crab, are described, love that nickname, by the way, are described as more discussions than negotiations, but they're a big deal because they show how much Trump and Rubio want a deal to normalize relations with Cuba. The clip, the screenshot from his article says Rubio and his team see the 41-year-old grandson in his circle as representing younger, business-minded Cubans for whom revolutionary communism has failed and who see value in rapprochement with the U.S. Our position, the U.S. government's position, is the regime has to go, the senior official said, but what exactly that looks like is up to President Trump, and he has yet to decide. Rubio is still in talks with the grandson. The next post from Caputo says, this is 3 out of 5 posts. Notably, the Marco Rubio talks are described as friendly, and El Cangrejo has impressed U.S. officials. My favorite quote, Rubio could be straight out of Hialeah. I don't know what that means, but I'm not really sure what that means. The screenshot here says he's the apple of his grandfather's eye, served as the dictator's bodyguard, and also has allies running the mammoth military business conglomerate known as Gaisa, said one source who described the Rubio-Castro conversations as surprisingly friendly. Quote, there's no political diatribes about the past. It's about the future, the source said, noting their common Cuban heritage and accents that are the lingua franca of Miami and surrounding cities. quote, Rolito could be straight out of Hialeah. The source said this could be a conversation between regular guys on the streets of Miami. I assume Hialeah must be a neighborhood in Miami. And then number 4, the fourth post, reality check, rapprochement, and replicating what the U.S. sees as success so far in Venezuela will be a lot harder. The Castro family may stay in Cuba under deal with Trump, and Communist Party members are likely to remain in power in some fashion. The screenshot says some Castro family members, including Raul Castro, might not be forced into exile under a deal with Trump, which would outrage Cuban exiles in Miami. Rubio hasn't spoken with Cuba's official leader, President Miguel Diaz-Canel Bermudez, or other high-ranking officials. They're perceived by the U.S. to be Communist Party apparatchiks, unable to envision and negotiate change in Cuba, said another source familiar with the Trump team's thinking. And then the final post says, to be clear, Rubio is keenly aware and supportive of a U.S. law that imposes the embargo on Cuba in return for a free Cuba. Trump is the decider of any deal, and he has yet to decide. Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, after decades and decades of embargo, it's pretty fair to ask, is Cuba suffering because of their economic policies, or are they suffering because of sanctions that are external sanctions that are being imposed on them by the U.S.? I think that's a pretty fair question to ask. And it looks like, look, this is following the same pattern as we saw in Venezuela, and we've seen in other places. Kim Jong-un, by the way, North Korea, 2018. 2 weeks before Trump met him in Singapore, Trump was like, he's fat and stupid, and he says mean things about me. So you know what? The deal's off. We're not going to meet. The June 12th meeting is canceled. And then what did he do? He gets on Air Force One and he flies to Singapore on June 12th and met with him. So we have a history that we can point back to of President Trump saying he's not going to do something and then turning around and doing it when it comes to negotiating deals with foreign leaders that we've been told are so evil that they can't be allowed to live. That's been the narrative on the Kim family. It's been the narrative on the Castro family, Maduro. You name it. So you go back to Iran and you're like, well, if they're being this open-minded about Cuba, which, I think we probably could very easily take the island of Cuba far easier than we could the nation of Iran. You got to think that cooler heads are probably prevailing behind the scenes when it comes to Iran.
Yeah, and as you pointed out too in our previous show, there has been a number of high-level Iranians meeting as well in Moscow with the Russian counterparts all throughout January up until just this, throughout February too. So to what degree that's filtering into the discussion between the U.S., Russian, Iranian factor, that's a big question. Also, Trump has had several seemingly positive meetings or discussions with Xi Jinping, and even more recently came out with a statement saying that, on Taiwan, where he said the following.
President Xi, in your talk with him recently, it warned about sending more weapons to Taiwan. What was your response to him? Are you going to send more weapons to Taiwan?
I have a response. I'm talking to him about it. We had a good conversation, and we'll make a determination pretty soon.
Tell us about your trip.
We have a very good relationship with President Xi. In fact, I'll be going, I guess, in April.
And further in that those comments, he was saying that it may not be the case that weapons are sent to Taiwan as has been threatened. And that is a casus belli in many ways, or not a casus belli so much as being a cause for military intervention into Taiwan, which has been serving as a giant U.S. military aircraft carrier with, for a number of years, really since the entirety of the Cold War, and has been used in a very provocative way. And we know that the NED, the National Endowment for Democracy, have had their tentacles deeply embedded into Taiwan. I would be curious to what degree Israeli intelligence has also been involved in a lot of these shenanigans. We know it's a cult center as well, Falun Gong. We know that Scientology. We know many of these Asian UFO cults have been given massive power and prestige and protection in Taiwan, all of which have been used in different degrees for regime change, infiltration, and overthrow of foreign governments. B'nai B'rith, as well, being an aspect of Israeli intelligence inside of, not B'nai B'rith, sorry, the Baha'i movement, the Baha'is as well, I believe, were also have a Taiwanese connection. So the fact that you have these NED assets provoking or trying to provoke mainland China, saying that they want to have separation, they want to have their own country. Of course, that'll never happen. It's kind of like the Armenians being promised that they're going to be given their own country if they just play ball. And I use that, you know, with the innuendo attached of playing ball. But if they just go ahead, you know, play a role, play nicely with various freedom fighters in order to overthrow Iraq, Syria, other countries, Turkey, destabilize there. But then, you know, at the end of the day, they're all disposable, just like the Taiwanese are fully disposable in that operation. So the idea that there's also civil back-channel discussion between the highest levels of China and the USA, discussing defusing this multi-generational time bomb that's been built up in China's backyard. That's useful as well. So we've got all sorts of signs and signals that there is a discussion for getting off-ramps from the trajectory of all-out war. I don't know about the Europeans right now. There's some weird stuff going on there. A lot of strange people like Kallas and Rutte calling for building up a new European military force to get around some of the obstacles that they're currently facing within NATO. There's some strange discussions happening there. No idea how they're thinking about that, since Europe has completely dismantled their economies as well as their general culture over so many generations that I don't know, you know, how they're even going to come close to that sort of thing. But they're talking about an inevitable war with Russia or something. So we'll see. But yeah, there does seem to be overall evidence of cooler heads. So I do appreciate that. Now we are reaching the top of the hour, and I do have to cut it short, unfortunately.
Okay.
But do you have anything you wanted to show there?
Yeah. So just a few things. Because I want to address what you said. Europe, in my opinion, is Don Quixote, like jousting with windmills. Like they're pretty much a non-factor, because for what you said, they've dismantled their own economies. They have no energy production whatsoever. They are effectively a third world economy that is kind of living off the fumes of their great past, as well as the fact that they have like fantastic tourism and their geography and their proximity to one another. They have some luxury goods that they produce, but for the most part, they are, like, comparatively speaking to like Russia, China, the US, a third world economy, because they don't produce their own energy. That makes them kind of irrelevant. They're not doing anything. They can sit there and scream and cry all they want about creating their own army. They're not creating anything. They don't even make their own bullets. So, you know, like, what are you going to do? When it comes to the other point you were making, when it comes to Iran, the last point that I want to point out is something that I've been talking about for a very long time, which is, who are Trump's really key allies in the Middle East? Because everyone, you know, the shills online will say, well, of course, it's Netanyahu and Israel. I don't really think that's true. I actually think that his key allies in the Middle East are MBS in Saudi Arabia. That one's pretty obvious. And Erdogan in Turkey. You'll remember that when Syria fell in December of 24, Trump immediately took to Truth Social and congratulated his old dear friend, President Erdogan, for successfully doing what couldn't be done for 2,000 years, which was to conquer Syria. The Ottomans, you know, like, are looking down proudly on him, right? It's like, that is what Trump said. Now we have this. This is Naftali Bennett. Naftali Bennett is like the Ron DeSantis of Israel, because if Netanyahu faces an election because he loses support from the Knesset, this is the guy who's most likely going to become the next prime minister of Israel. Listen to what he says here.
Is emerging. I want to be very clear. Turkey and Qatar have gained influence in Syria, are seeking influence elsewhere and everywhere throughout the region. And from here, I warn, Turkey is the new Iran. Erdogan is sophisticated, dangerous, and he seeks to encircle Israel. We can't close our eyes again.
Yes, the
And
third.
while some senior Israelis,
the third person that I would say, like, in addition to MBS and Erdogan, would be Tamim, would be the leader of Qatar. Like, Trump has made it very clear that he loves Tamim. Him and Tamim have known each other a very long time. It's worth pointing out. I'll show you two more things, and then we'll check rants and get out of here. Very quickly, just got a news of a normalization deal. Saudi Arabia and Qatar signed an important agreement to launch maritime logistics corridors aimed at enhancing the efficiency of regional trade through ports and direct land connectivity between the two countries, in addition to establishing joint regional distribution centers. And they have maps that show what that's going to look like. And then finally, you have this clip from Lindsey Graham. There's so many clips I could show you from Lindsey Graham. He's just quite the rube. But here he is talking about Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia is now moving backward. They're attacking the United Arab Emirates pretty viciously for being in the Abraham Accords.
Well, they say it's because of Sudan and Yemen.
There is no good reason for this. You can have disputes about Sudan and Yemen, but they're basically declaring war.
Yeah. So this is rhetoric that Lindsey Graham's been putting out for a while, that Saudi Arabia, he's like, I have to rethink the entire relationship with Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure if they're actually our allies. We should maybe just cut ties with them. Same thing he was saying in 2018 after Khashoggi was murdered by the CIA, and it was blamed on, or Mossad, and it was blamed on MBS. But again, like, so why is Trump doing this? Like, the question is why the dog and pony show, right? Like, why not just come out and say, yeah, we're normalizing with Iran. Iran's cool. Like, let's just move on. Like, same with Castro. Well, I think we have a lot of enemies in our government. I think we have a lot of enemies in the Republican Party. I think we have a lot of enemies. The enemies aren't out there. The enemies aren't out there outside of the fort. The enemies are in the fort. They're wearing the MAGA hats. They're wearing they are going to become the leaders of MAGA when Trump rides off into the sunset. Those are the people that I worry about. Those are the people who keep me up at night, are the people who look like they are in a position to take over when Trump is done. And I think, like, identifying those people, exposing them, and allowing them to destroy themselves, I think, is the critical mission of this movement moving forward. If we do not accomplish that between now and 2028, then we have utterly failed as stewards of this country and this movement to reclaim self-governance. So that's where I want the focus to move to. And I think, considering that Trump has all these friends everywhere, China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, etc., I think that's what he's doing, because I think he knows I'm not going to fight a war with Russia. Like, they're my friends, but I can pretend that I'm going to fight a war with Russia. And in doing so, all of these shills are going to come out of the woodwork and scream like, yeah, go, 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 war, 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 war. We should be paying attention to who those people are, because those are the enemies of mankind.
Well said. I think those are good closing words. I think those are very good closing words. We have one last little ad to read, and while I do that, if you want to scan through to see if there were any comments that are meritorious of being read out loud here, so I'll just read the ad, which is it's a soft disclosure ad. I can do that. 1 second. I'm just pulling up my Excel sheet here with the script on it, which is difficult to manage with my finger. Okay, I got it. Okay. All right, fellas, quick question. Is your beard intentional, or is it just happening to your face? That's pretty funny. If it's dry, crunchy, or doing whatever it wants, it's not rugged, it's neglect. Soft Disclosure Beard Oil fixes that. A few drops softens the hair, conditions the skin underneath, and takes your beard from chaotic to dialed in. No grease, no overpowering fake scent, just clean ingredients that actually work. Now, we've added the upgrade, our new boar bristle beard brush. Engraved with the Soft Disclosure logo and ethically imported and finished right here in the USA. Real bristles, real control. It distributes oil evenly, trains the beard, and makes it look like you meant to grow it that way. And here's the move. When you grab a beard oil, you can add the brush for 25% off. Buy the brush by itself, full price. So do it right. Soft Disclosure Beard Oil and the new boar bristle brush. Visit softdisclosure.com and level up your beard game.
And right. I have that right here. The beard oil is great. They just sent it to me. It came in on Friday. Got the brush too. It works great. My beard is much softer. I'd never actually heard that word crunchy beard before. Like, I heard it for the first time on Friday. And they're right.
But you know exactly what that is, right? Like that's a very potent word as an
Oh yeah. Like, you touch it and it crunches. You can hear it. You can feel it. It's kind of gross. It's kind of like sandpaper. Dude, I've been using this for days now since Friday. And my kids actually likes rubbing my beard now. They used to hate it.
Wow.
They used to hate my beard, and they'd say, "Daddy, shave your beard." I only grew it out just to test the beard oil out.
You're walking the walk, man. You're living the life. I myself, it takes forever to grow my beard, so I've made a point there. As it's beginning, in about 4 or 5 more months, I should be able to start using that product.
There you go. All right, we do have one, or I'm sorry, a rant just came in from Baba Fo. I think I'm saying that right. $5. Thanks, Matt and Ghost, giving loads of information to chew on. Thank you for the rant. Appreciate you, Baba Fo. Again, don't know if I'm saying your name right, but appreciate you. And we do have another, we have a boost from Carrying the Fire 7, $10. Ghost, what is really happening in Gaza, and why does nobody talk or speculate about it, especially on the right? Good right, fake right, neocons, just total silence. If 10% of what I see is true, it looks pretty rough over there. I can't say for certain what has happened or is happening in Gaza, and I don't want to put out bad information. However, I will say this. The Board of Peace, the first meeting is supposed to happen tomorrow in America, like on U.S. soil. So I think we're going to get a lot more indication as to what's actually going on. Not necessarily like from the stories that come out, because I think the stories are hard to verify, right? Like, are these things actually happening? Do we actually fly a B-2 over Iran and destroy a nuclear facility? I don't know. However, you can evaluate the reaction to those stories. How does Netanyahu respond to that story? Well, he keeps sending planes to Iran to fight the war for longer, right? Like, how is Lindsey Graham responding to it? How is MBS responding to it? How is Erdogan responding to it? Trump, etc. Right? So I look for like that. A lot of my analysis is, how do people when I understand how these people operate and what their motives are from a pattern that they've established, how are they reacting to this stuff? Are they in favor of this thing, or are they not in favor of it? When I see all the neocons angry that something is happening in the Middle East, it's a good indication that that's probably something that should be happening, and it's probably something that's positive for mankind. When I see them happy about something happening in the Middle East, that worries me. So that's how I do like a lot of my analysis. Let's see what happens with this meeting tomorrow. That's for the Board of Peace. Let's see what spins out, because I don't know what to make of the Board of Peace, but I can say that I applaud the effort. I applaud the idea of taking control of Gaza away from Israel and giving it to somebody else, whoever that is. That's certainly a step in the right direction, in my opinion.
Yeah, and as long as Tony Blair is not playing a guiding role, and it does seem like you have it being stuffed with other foreign leaders who could feasibly drown out any type of nefarious influence that would be played by Blair in that process. Okay, we'll see where this goes. Definitely better than seeing people murdered on a daily basis in the thousands. So,
consider what Naftali Bennett just said in that clip about Qatar and Turkey, and how Turkey's the new Iran. Like he's seeing the end of the road in the Iran story. So now he's going to shift it. Like, we're shifting it from Ukraine to Iran. Now we're shifting it from Iran to Turkey. Consider that Trump has demanded that Turkish and Qatari soldiers be on the ground in Gaza. And then consider that, Turkish soldiers, that's Article 5. If you fire a bullet at those soldiers, Israel, you're going to find yourself immediately at war with all of NATO.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, fun ironies. So I always appreciate our little chats. This has been very, very useful to just create a mapping of the schisms, the invisible battle lines that often we fail to take note of. And I appreciate this, Gordon. I think everybody watching this does too. So until next week, we will leave you with this week's episode of Breaking History. Be sure to like and share with your friends and family, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.